All right. Welcome and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Water Connections Irrigation Series. And today I am really excited to be talking about sustainable landscape maintenance. And the reason I'm excited about this is because a lot of people wonder what can we be doing in our gardens? What can we do on our landscapes that will really change the maybe the outputs of what we're putting out in our garden and reducing the inputs and how that affects our gardens overall. So today, helping me do this is Stuart Eyring. Now, Stuart, for those of you who have seen him on LinkedIn, know that he is probably our most entertaining educator in our field, but he does have 18 years of experience in irrigation and water. He's the CEO of Orbit Irrigation, and what I would like to say is that Stuart's somebody who really gets and understands the value of sustainability, of water conservation, and he's really dedicated to changing the way the world waters. He is so nice today to take us through his own garden, his own landscape there in Salt Lake, and show us some of the things he's doing so we can learn from his great example. Stuart, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Richard. Good to be with you.
Yeah, so Stuart, help us understand this. How, because when people think about sustainable landscape, or in this case, a well-maintained landscape actually impacts the landscape in a more sustainable manner, sometimes they don't quite get that. So what do you mean when you say that?
Well, come on over and let's look at some of the elements of it. And obviously, a part that's easily noticeable here is a smart mower. This is a robotic mower, and it mows automatically, Richard.
Yeah, so that's great, and that's actually a very cool looking mower. I love that. It looks like your turf's pretty tall, but that mower doesn't have any problem getting through that. Is that right?
Nope, this is on the mid setting. This is on a setting 5. Could go much tighter with this, but for this climate and this time of year, August, I love this. I love this length.
So the mower seems to be going right to the edge and stopping. How does it know to do that?
There's a system set up with sensors, and it knows right where to go.
So for those people who don't have an auto mower, they usually mow maybe once a week. Maybe in the middle of summer, they get up to 2 times a week. Does that mower have to mow once a week, twice a week? What's it do as far as the schedule?
I have it set up, and this is just based on my preference. There is a mode where it can detect how long the grass is and then schedule the frequency around it. I have it set so I can keep it really dialed in from a watering standpoint during these peak waters, so that it actually hits this about every 2 days. It's going to hit this lawn, and then what it's going to do is it's just going to take a very little bit off the top of the turf, and then it's going to put those clippings down in. And in terms of inputs, and that's going to reduce the amount of fertilizer that I need to apply, because there's going to be beneficial nitrogen that will come from the decomposition of those tiny tops of the blades that are being cut off each time. So I keep the frequency higher, then those blades are even smaller and mulch in much faster.
Yeah. So then, do you end up seeing a bunch of dead grass all over your lawn? What's
No. Here, come on in close. First, you can see it's a super clean cut, and then the other thing you can see is that there's really no thatch layer. I mean, if I get right down in there, you can see that we're right down there to the soil, and so they're really, really small, fine cuts that it makes, and then it's just perfect for mulching and doesn't create any thatch buildup.
Yeah, and I think I learned once that grass is actually a good portion of the grass is water. When you make these cuts, does it actually return water to the soil?
That's great. And it also, when I keep it a little bit lower like this, it reduces the total ET requirement, the evapotranspiration requirement of the turf. So you've got both of those factors. So you've got a little bit of moist layer coming in on top of that. Plus, then you've got the fact that it's going to be a little bit lower water use at this height.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think people in agriculture will relate to that really well. I've got a customer who's got 120 acres of turf, and he was explaining to me that he lowers the cutting settings in July, a quarter inch every week, and reduces the water and ends up saving about $600,000 of water every summer and fall as a result of this. It's pretty interesting what, because a lot of people don't think about this combination of mowing and water, but it is really closely associated.
Absolutely. The cultivation practice is super important for how much water the crop, or in this case, the ornamental landscape will use. And just by choosing my mower settings and by auto mowing where it's keeping it at that level all throughout the week, I'm reducing water as an input to my landscape.
Yeah. So, what about safety issues with that mower, Stuart? Do you worry about running over somebody's foot or hitting the cat or
No,
dog? Or...
no. If you come on over here, I'll just show you that if it were to bump into me, then of course it will sense that immediately. So it's got sensors all around it, super safe. And in fact, I'll just show you kind of what the cutting mechanism actually looks like on it. You can just see it's just these, let me use my tool here. You can see it's just these blades right here. This disc is spinning around and you've got these three blades, and they're very sharp blades. And so it really gives a nice clean cut. You don't get a lot of browning of the blade because it is so tight. And then you can just sort of see, if you look right here, you can see how small the clippings are. That's kind of the size of them. But that's how it works. It's just this disc spinning, and then it's got features built in where it can sense whether it's coming in contact with anything, which reduces the really risk of it bumping into something or accidentally mowing over something.
Yeah, so I'm wondering about the battery life now, right? I'm thinking about this being out every day or every other day to do the mowing, so you have that fresh look cut lawn,
Yeah.
which looks great. But is there a lot of battery requirement? Do I have to invest a lot in batteries? What's that look like?
No, and so here I'll pick him up and just show you what it looks like. Is that there's just this docking station right here, it's low voltage,
Huh.
and he goes to put his nose right in here like this, and then he's charging, and
Yeah.
that's it. And he automatically just comes right back to the charger, a little bit like even a vacuum does. He just finds his way back, charges, and then heads out again for the balance of his schedule.
So what keeps it from going down the driveway and down the street and over to the neighbors and mowing there?
Yeah, again, I've got sensors in around it. This has a specific boundary on it, and it keeps it in place. It can't go beyond that.
Yeah. So I will confess, Stuart, I have an auto mower myself and I just love it. And I'll tell you when I really loved it most is I'm doing a construction project in my yard. So I had to suspend the auto mowing and I was mowing my yard Saturday night at 7. And I was just very upset about, how much time it was taking me and what a waste of time it was compared to having the auto mower. And certainly the other thing I will say about my yard is after about 2 weeks of auto mowing, my yard looked better than when I was mowing it myself. Just returning the nutrients and water just really helped the health of my lawn.
For sure. So obviously, it saves water during the peak water usage months of the season. So for me, that's going to be July, August. But then also, it's a terrific looking lawn. I mean, I couldn't achieve this any other way, and it looks like this all the time.
Yeah. Okay, great. So first piece of technology is the auto mower, and I
Yeah.
think it's real obvious how that's going to save time and reduce the inputs and reduce outputs like pollution from gas engines. But so, what's the next thing you want to touch on today, Stuart?
Let's talk then about precision irrigation, and there's an equipment piece of that. But let's start with the control piece of it. This is my controller right here. I'm running 18 zones actively. I've got a couple of spares if I want to expand. And the key thing with this timer is it is connected then, this controller is connected to the Beehive app. The Beehive app then has full weather connected capability until about 11 minutes ago, right up till 1 o'clock. This was actually in a rain delay. We got a lot of rain yesterday, as Beehive predicted that it would. And so that rain delay automatically comes down to the clock and then prevents it from turning on during the period where there's going to be rain. And the point of that, of course, is to let that rainfall do its work. And then Beehive will go back to check how much rain actually fell from using actual weather stations. So it's predicting based on a forecast. And then it's looking at an actual weather station to say how much did it rain. And then it's going to deduct that from any future watering schedule. And so actually, this isn't set to water again. We're here on Wednesday. It hasn't watered, I think, if I go back and look at my schedule, since last Saturday, and it's not going to water till Friday. So wow. Going almost a week in the middle of, in August, which is just unbelievable. But that is the power of Beehive technology and these WaterSense, EPA WaterSense smart controllers. And you can see how good the lawn looks. And I'm watering at 56.7% of the full evapotranspiration value for cool season turf. And so this is a really, really lean water schedule. And with some of the other tricks that I'm going to show you, combined with the auto mowing, and then just Beehive choosing the right timing to water, letting the rainfall happen before it waters, is really how I'm achieving this phenomenal looking landscape and conserving water and other inputs at the same time.
Yeah, so a lot of questions coming in on this. I do want to remind everybody that we do have the Q&A open. So if you have some questions, put them in there and I'll get them to Stuart when appropriate. So let's back up a second and talk about this rainfall or rain delay.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned to me the other day, you get 2 inches of rain in Salt Lake in one day. I can't imagine that all 2 inches would go into the ground. I imagine there was a lot of runoff and water being wasted. So when this happens, does your calculation take into account 2 inches or some percentage of that?
That's right. And we actually, in the early days of development, so this is back, it's been 8 or so years ago, we had a huge rain event in Houston. Just a deluge came down, and that wasn't inches, that was measured in feet. And so it prompted us to actually then build in a decay algorithm, knowing that not all of that water is actually then going to be in the soil. Some of it's going to run off. The water that does come in is going to push the water that's already in the soil down, and so some of the water will deep percolate below it. So Beehive has a special algorithm that then gets it back to a normal schedule, and doesn't factor in all of that rainfall that ran off. And so that's why this is going to water Friday. If it had taken in the full value, that might have been pushed out even more. But Beehive knows that not all of that water made it into the soil.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we have another viewer, and they're asking a question about this word evapotranspiration. What does that mean, and how is it related to the amount of irrigation?
Well, Richard, what does it mean to you?
So, right, I call it the opposite of rain, right? I call evapotranspiration how much water is actually coming out of the soil or evaporating out of the soil, and how much water the plants are actually transpiring. So plants are pulling water out. Yeah. The evaporation of the day is evaporating the water out of the soil, and as a result, we get this evapotranspiration, or the opposite of rain.
All right. And you can see what I did there, folks, is give the person the opportunity to respond if the person knows more about it than I do.
I doubt that. But so then what your controller is doing, Stuart, is actually measuring how much water is evaporating out of the soil, how much the plants are using, and then replacing it on a certain periodic time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And let's talk then specifically about what's happening in a plant. And let's just use turf as an example. This is a 5 variety Kentucky bluegrass, which just gives it great durability throughout the year. And what happens is that when the sun comes up, it activates the stomata, right, in the blade of in this case the grass. Right. And that then kicks off photosynthesis. And as part of photosynthesis, water is used. And so that plant is bringing water up through the roots. It's very important that there be oxygen in there. That's why, again, watering correctly and what Beehive does is so important, is that you want actually to have water in the soil, but not so much that there's not oxygen mixed in with it, because that oxygen is key to the photosynthesis process. And in the process of photosynthesis, then there is water that is evaporated and transpired up through this blade, and then that ultimately goes into evaporation into the air, and it happens during the day. So that really you want to have, in terms of watering, you want to have that water available when photosynthesis starts in the morning. I like to time my watering so that it ends close to when the sun comes up. Also happens to be that generally I'm a little bit better from a wind standpoint there. And wind is by far the biggest single factor, as we talked about, I think last time, in evapotranspiration. And so avoiding watering at windy times isn't just helpful from the standpoint of avoiding wind drift of the spray from overhead sprinkling. Not an issue with drip, but certainly with overhead sprinklers it is. But then also making sure that we're not losing that water to excess of evapotranspiration that's created by the wind.
So another question that's coming in, Stuart, is this question from a viewer about, should I've always learned that I should water slow and for long periods of time.
Slow for sure, because that's going to avoid runoff. Soil has a certain intake rate. Typically, the rule is that the drier the soil, then the lower the intake rate is going to be. That's part of the reason why we cycle, is we get in an initial cycle, we're getting that soil nice and moist so that it's able to bring water in more efficiently, right? And then there's also the issue that, depending on my soil type, will depend. If I've got larger pores for that water to go into, it's going to be able to take a lot more. The intake rate will be higher, take a lot more water in. If it's really fine, like a clay, then it's going to be harder for that water to permeate. So, of course, watering slow is just a generally good rule. Depending on what type of equipment you're watering with, Beehive will automatically break the watering time up to avoid runoff.
So that's a setting within the software. You can just pick what you're watering with, and it'll figure out how fast that water is applied.
Yes, and the type of the soil that it's on. One thing that you need to adjust for that you would know is if you've got a high traffic area where there's high compaction, then that would also be an argument for increasing the number of cycles. And increasing cycles just means same total runtime for the day, but it means taking that runtime and breaking it up into intervals within that day. And that gives the chance for the water to really soak in. And so compaction, where you got heavy traffic in an area, could be an issue. You can tell here, though. I mean, just look how this soil has really great intake rate. I could water a single cycle would be fine with this soil. I still do too, just because I feel like I get even more efficiency just by breaking it up a little.
Yeah, it's interesting. A few years ago, when we had the heavy rains in California through the winter, people were talking about the weight of that water that was hitting our croplands, and what that was doing to the intake rate of the soil. It was something that we hadn't really had to consider before. But yeah, this rate of compaction is important. So one thing's for sure, it sounds like, is we really have to take a look at our soil type before we can figure out our watering.
For sure. And in a farm environment, ag specialists will actually dig soil pits. It's so important to understand what happens to that water after it gets into the soil, because the soil, depending on the profile, there are different layers in that soil, and then that will determine where that water moves. And so there's no substitute. I'll show you in a minute with just a simple core that we can get a good sense in a very local area for what's happening in the soil. But there's no substitute for a great soil pit. All the agronomists out there will tell you that.
Yeah, so I was wondering what you use at your home, right, to figure out the type of soil you have. And sounds like you have some type of probe or something you use.
Yeah, and we'll head out there. Let's just finish in talking about, again, other features of sustainable landscape management. And really key to that is, I'm on what's called secondary water here. So this is technically irrigation or farm water, very lightly filtered. I've got a large filter for the system. It's also very high pressure, so I pressure regulate. And then after the filter and pressure regulator, I also, and you can just see from the rainfall, still got some water. This is an ultrasonic meter, and this is connected to my beehive. And then this gives me very, very accurate readings of how much water I'm using for each zone in the system. Allows me to know overall what my usage is, also detect any anomalies. And so it's really, really nice to have a really good flow meter for me to be able to just practice super sustainable landscape management.
Yeah. So is that flow meter just for your irrigation, or does it check what's happening in?
Irrigation, irrigation only. So for
Yeah.
most of our listeners, they're going to be on a system that actually is using their culinary system. It should have been designed ideally so that some of the house faucets can be on. For instance, a shower can run simultaneous with the irrigation system. It's really lousy to have poor pressure, right? When you're irrigating in the morning and trying to take a shower. We don't have that issue here because we're on two totally separate connections. This connection, because it's irrigation water, does not have, for instance, backflow prevention on it, which any culinary system will have that, but that's not a requirement for secondary water here.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So here in California, somebody said to me the other day, when they realized that we use drinking water, quality water to water our lawns, they couldn't believe it. But
Yeah.
one of the things that's nice is if you separate your meters here, landscape and inside the house separately, we pay a sewer fee based on how much water we totally use. If you break that out, you save some money by not having to pay that sewer fee on some of the large commercial properties I do work on. It more than pays for itself in the first couple months to make that swap out, and then you really know what you're using in your landscape, which is so important.
Yeah, let's head to the back here because I can build on that point. I mean, it's super important with irrigation not to create runoff with irrigation and not to deep percolate. And you can see that my bigger issue here will be runoff. I think hopefully, Richard, it does show up. As you can see, it's quite a bit of slope here in the
Yeah.
backyard.
Now,
And so I definitely do need to cycle on this part of my yard. That's not optional because slope is the other factor that will create runoff. And so again, breaking that watering into smaller increments. And this is done with low precipitation rotors, just meaning that the application rate of the water is quite low. And then I still break that up just to make sure I don't move any water down the hill. At the bottom of that hill, there's actually a drain, and that drain is part of the stormwater management system for here in South Davis, the southern part of the county. And that goes down out to, and what you see in the background there are the wetlands at the fringe of the Great Salt Lake. And so, yeah, it's really important that I water smart here to prevent anything from, one, just to not waste water, but then also to make sure that I'm not putting any fertilizers or fungicides into into the Great Salt Lake ultimately.
yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because so often it would be easy to over fertilize and push that fertilizer right into the Great Salt Lake. So, Stuart, help us understand better this idea of cycle and soak, right? Because if I'm watering a lot on that hill, and that's a pretty big slope, all that water is going down to the bottom. So I'm going to be soggy on the bottom and light on the top. What do we do about that?
Okay, so just little tricks of the trade. Uh, Mandatory in several states at this point, but that little white fitting in the bottom there, that is the pressure regulator on this spray head. And so really important with a higher precipitation nozzle to make sure that it is pressure regulated. That also prevents wind drift, right? If there's too much pressure, then what happens is the water gets atomized, and with any kind of wind ends up blowing off. This helps improve the efficiency. So that part of it's super important. And then the other part that's important for what you're talking about in terms of the intake rate of the soil then is understanding just how fast the water is being applied, that application rate, sometimes called precipitation rate. And this is a catch cup or catch can, and it's got gradients on it. It's got both milliliters and inches. The inches are really used because I know that in a given day, a full watering of this specific soil, and Beehive knows this. You don't need to, you don't need to know this, but Beehive knows that this soil can hold 0.33 inches of water before it would be watering past the root zone. And so the 0.33 is the key number, but then my sprinklers aren't completely efficient. And so we use a default value in Beehive of saying, well, they're only 75% efficient. Now you can strive for more, and Beehive has easy ways to adjust that, where you can assume even higher efficiency. The higher the efficiency, the less gross up there is of that 0.33 inches of water. Is that making sense, Richard? So actually, I'm going to be applying 0.44 inches. So this inches part of it, I can run. I put catch cups out, and then I run the regular irrigation setting. I just let Beehive run, and then I go out and check. And what I want to see is that in a full irrigation watering, I've watered to about right here. This is 0.4 here, so it's going to be between 0.4 and be between 0.45. On the other side, it's milliliters, and these are for input into the Beehive app. And Beehive then takes that and automatically calculates what the precipitation rate is for this area. And if I put enough catch cups out, it will also tell me how uniform it is. And it will show me areas where I've got what I call hot spots, where I'm not getting as much water, and I need to make some adjustments to the sprinkler heads. And you can see I've got this really dialed into this white. I mean, this is a really good system, but it's all done with components that are contractor installed and can easily be maintained. There's nothing here that's, super specialty that would be hard to find or hard to keep the system at this level of design and operational excellence.
So, Stuart, I would think that each catch cup would have the same amount of water in it, right? Because
ideally, yes.
But
and
it
I've got
doesn't.
some zones. No, I have some zones that are that good, and it just depends. You'll have trouble, and there are specialty products that can compensate for poor design, but it's hard to get a lot better than the original design. But in an excellent design, and part of that just means also that the landscape has to have a fairly uniform shape. But there are cases where I can get very, very high uniformities, upper 80%, even with sprays on those zones. But again, well designed with the equipment operating just right, and then you will see the amount of water in that cup be very, very consistent cup to cup.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I see often is I'll see maybe a spray head rotated one way or another that shouldn't be, that would affect the amount of water going in there, or a clogged spray head, maybe not clogged to where no water comes out, but where it creates a crease in the pattern, and it doesn't actually fill the cup up the way we want it to.
Yep, absolutely. I would just say that it's worth paying a contractor for a wet check. And highly recommend that you use contractors who've been certified by the Irrigation Association. And if you don't use a contractor, please do it yourself. Don't let your sprinklers run at night without actually knowing what's happening, because invariably, Richard, it's as you say, you'll be surprised what you'll see when you go out and check them. So I highly suggest having a professional do a wet check on your system, and then making sure that it's kept in good order.
So true. And I see this all the time, even on my system. I'll turn it on in the day just to check out what's going on. I'll go, wow, that head's not rotating. So I've just been watering one spot, the whole time. And no wonder why my grass doesn't look like yours. And so the other thing I want to mention about this wet check, right, is that really, I think what is key here is to really do an analysis of your water beforehand, measure, and then report on how much you're using. And I think that really is what you do, what your software helps you do, and the results are pretty obvious. So, do you have that core handy? I wanted to see what that looks like, how we tell our soil.
Yeah, let's go on down.
Yeah.
Richard, are we okay with time?
Yeah, we're doing great. And one of the viewers is just mentioning that the Weber Basin Water Conservation District in northern Utah will provide catch cups, orbit cups. They even mentioned for free to residents who want to do their own water audit. Well, very nice.
This
Oh, that's what I was
this
going to ask you.
this is
Can the
this is
mower make it up that slope?
absolutely, yeah.
Do
This
you
is
use
the
that slope for anything else besides walking around, Stuart?
if you look back up at the house, you see that blue tarp. It's a
Yeah.
fabulous slip and slide. So you can imagine the run out. The run out here is barely enough, and for winter with the sledding, we actually have a baseball type of netting, but like behind home plate that we put down there to keep people from running off the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it's a fantastic hill. Tricky for irrigation though, but it highlights why turf is so important on my property. But look, if you look behind you, I can see I retain with rocks here, but I can't do that everywhere. I would get epic. In fact, before this turf was put in, we put, and there was actually a gate down there in the wall. We put and there's a swimming pool on the other side. We put a lot of dirt over into that, a lot of soil over into that from a washout. So it's important for me to have this turf, but then I've got to water it right because this is a big slope. Okay, so let's just go in here and let's do a nice core. And wow, isn't that cool? Look, it's cool to me.
Yeah.
But you can see how this is the root, this is the crown of the turf right here, and then you can see that I've got a really consistent soil profile here. If it weren't, I'd see different layers in this. You can also see that I've got mainly medium and larger particles. This then is what we call a sandy loam soil. The finer the soil, the more you get into your silts and clays, and then the bigger the pores, the more you get into your sands. And loam is really in the middle of those, and you can see I've got a decent amount of organic matter in there. That's the other thing I check for. And then what I do here is I can just sort of see, and it's summer, so I'm not going to have as much root zone, but I sort of see that first root just right there. Oh, that's nice. Look at that,
Yeah.
Richard.
So this whole probe's about 9 inches long, 12 inches long.
Yep, yep. And so you
And
can
so
see I've got 7 or so inches going on that, which at this time of year for Kentucky bluegrass, that's a healthy root zone there.
yeah.
Delighted to find this.
And then the soil being darker at the top and lighter at the bottom, is that due to organic matter or more water being held in the soil?
Absolutely right. Is that organic matter is going to build up over time there in a really helpful kind of way. Again, because I'm automowing, not thatch. Richard, look at that root going all the way down there. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I've got really healthy turf here. Now
Yeah, you do.
let me tell you though an interesting thing about the soil that was brought in, and let me just show you a necrotic ring spot. Look right here. This is my property line right here, and you see that right there, that sort of frog eye where it's green, and then
Yeah.
it's this light green around it. Now this is well healed at this point, meaning that this has been treated. And let me show you. You'll see you don't see it over here, and the reason is that I rotate my applications between two different kinds of fungicides. So let me just show you one that I like as a preventative. And if the soil has a necrotic ring spot in it, even with the best irrigation scheduling, especially to the degree that we water between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. here, those are the allowable hours during those hot summer months with hot summer evenings, it's going to be good conditions for fungus. I really like Heritage G as a preventative application, Headway G as a control application after it's broken out. And you can see, because I rotate what's called 3336, so a different kind. I use multiple kinds of fungicide so that the turf and the fungus doesn't get used to just one kind of herbicide. And I apply those in rotation. You can see no issue right up to where it's applied. And this could benefit from a rotation. But then again, it's super important. What Beehive does is if there's any kind of true with fertilizer, also true with the fungicide, not to have any runoff from that. And so my super controlled watering and making sure that I've got that cycling set up right, that I really understand my precipitation rates, means that the fungicide stays here in the soil. But that's a really helpful way by rotating treatments through the summer for keeping Kentucky bluegrass in particular really healthy.
Yeah, you know,
That's
here in Southern,
free advice there.
yeah, and it's fantastic, right? Living here in Southern California, we don't have to deal with that. But when I was in Seattle, and my first spring, I was looking at my yard, and I was like, "What is going on here?" I needed that advice then because it's different in your cool season landscapes.
Richard, I just have to highlight here. Come on over here and look out, and you can see Antelope Island. The cool thing about this soil here, and a lot of the soil here is actually the original soil, and it's shoreline soil. And you look at the Great Salt Lake way down there, and you're like, how in the world could shoreline have been here? But when Lake Bonneville forms every 250,000 years, I'm underwater right here, just right at the edge of the lake. And so the mountains are actually eroding right down and depositing this. And so, come around in another 250,000 years and we'll be swimming here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Stuart, you must use a lot of power equipment on that property to maintain everything so beautifully. What about reducing inputs there? What do we do about that?
Oh, sorry, I left my catch cup here and he bumped into it. All right. Good question. And I really like the battery powered handhelds from Husqvarna. These are excellent. Blower might be the primary tools that I use. I have chainsaws and hedge trimmers and so forth, all battery powered as well. But these are the primary ones I use, go to on a weekly basis. And these are pro level 500 series trimmer, edger, trimmer, and then backpack blower. And again, talk about sustainable, battery powered, and super good power. Here's Turbo Boost.
Yeah, that's from our standpoint, that's pretty quiet. We can see the mower going in the background, which is very interesting. What about battery life? What about charging these? What do I have to do concerning all that? Because that worries me.
Yeah, this has excellent battery life, and again, very quiet. But you can see here, there's the battery monitor, and I mow, or I edge every bit of curving. I really like it to be that clean appearance, and so that's the battery indicator there. No problem. I can get 2 times around with a single battery charge.
Now, do I have to buy a battery for every device, or the battery is interchangeable? How's that?
No, they're super easy to swap out, and so it's just that's one battery. If I want to swap between them, just pull that out, slide that one in there like that, and that one in there like that, and then same for the backpack blower. Yeah. And if you've got to go all day, so for you contractors out there, there's actually a battery backpack that's got like several times the amps available for the day as this one. And so it's the blower is actually integrated into the battery pack. And so, that's dedicated, and you actually charge the battery pack itself is chargeable.
Did I see the battery charge indicator actually on the device, or do I have to see it on the battery?
Yes. So like the 525 series, absolutely. It's got it right on the device. And then you can also, when it's off, you can push on the battery and see what the status is. Yeah. So you can see four bars there. Does that make sense? Can you see that, Richard?
Yeah, we can see that. Okay. I just love seeing it on the handle too, because I'm much inclined to be looking at that handle when I'm working, right? I hate to get way away from the truck when my battery goes dead, and it's gonna be a day killer. So being able to see that easily.
Yeah, there's a really cool charging rail too for your trailer, and it allows you to charge 8 batteries simultaneously, single 110 power source that those plug into. We've of course got the for the drip system along here, and I'm just using 1/4-inch rings in these canna lilies, and these just run then off of the hose faucet here. That timer though has all the capability from a smart standpoint, including the rain delay piece of it within the Beehive app, because these are covered right here. We've got, not all the rain hits these. I can go into the Beehive app and I can actually say for this particular zone how much rain is hitting it. And when I say none, it then just ignores rainfall.
Huh. So that hose end timer really does everything your other controller does.
Yes, because the full brains are in the app. So I was showing you up in the garage. The controller there is cellular capable. It's got several different radios in it. It's really at a high, commercial end, can handle multiple flow meters. So it's got some hardware capabilities that are unique to it. But in terms of app capability, the most entry level controller and hose faucet timer even has really all of the same capability as the largest. What we give from a contractor standpoint with Beehive Pro is the ability to manage many timers across many different sites. But in terms of capability, we're EPA WaterSense in every regard. Plus, we build in features like the selection of how much rainfall gets to a zone, as well as the catch cup piece of it.
Yeah, so that's amazing. That's an amazing amount of technology in a small device for a really reasonable price. And I tell you, this is the challenge for so many people: is what do I do about my pots on my balcony? What do I do about my pots on my backyard
This is
ledge
it.
there? How do I water
Yep.
those when I go on vacation? You've got
Yeah.
that.
So this is it. And then up on the patio above, I've got lots of plants up there, and those are all watered while on vacation. And yeah, all taken care of. And so this yard really is both sustainable but very automatic from a smart standpoint. One other thing I just really want to mention is part of the reason why too I have this level. Let's just turn around, look at the turf again, and that kind of turf performance at a 56.7% ET value. Part of how I achieve that too is I use humectant, and in this case, it's a wetting agent. This one happens to be called Hydratane ES Plus. It's a granular format. They're different. I'm not promoting a brand here, except to say that these are very helpful in moisture management. I apply these in the early summer, late spring, early summer. So I applied in May, and I actually went ahead and applied again in June. And then what this helps the soil do is bring moisture to it and retain it. And so it's a boost on the watering that's already been, the supplemental irrigation that will be applied. And then it actually reduces that overall amount of irrigation that's required. Big fan of it. So I recommend checking this out. It's not just for turf either. It can be used in other parts of the landscape. So
Yeah,
that's one idea.
fabulous tip there, Stuart. I don't want anyone to miss what you just said. 56% of ET. So if you have to replace an inch, or if your neighbor or anybody else replacing an inch of water, you're only replacing about a half inch, and you're getting that type of result because of the practices you're implementing.
That's absolutely right. And then one more super sustainable practice that I suggest is, when a line breaks, that can be a real pain, right? It can take up a lot of time. So your labor is one input, but then also if you have to glue and then wait again, or use a solvent and then wait again to pressurize that line, that takes up time as well. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of push fittings. This particular fitting is a push lock slide repair or slip fix. And it's just this easy, where you just go like that. It's assembled. This yard has I pressure reduced, but I can actually only pressure reduce down to about 75 psi, which is still a pretty good value for rotors. And you can imagine by the time I get to the bottom, I've picked up more head pressure, right, because of the slope here. So this handles this kind of high pressure really well. These are long runs. My valves aren't particularly fast closing, and so I don't get a lot of water hammer on the line. But I just highly recommend these. They're super reliable. I use them. They're in many places in the yard as I swapped out valve manifolds over the years. I've used these. I just attest to the ease of using them, and they're just super environmentally friendly as well. So no solvents involved, and then you can immediately use them. And it's just nice to have, like when you've attached valves and stuff, to have that ability to rotate. So I highly recommend these as an additional sustainable practice in the landscape wherever you're doing a repair.
Yeah, my wife's going to be really happy with that because the days of glue on my jeans are over.
They should be.
So, Stuart, I'm seeing your mower in the background again. Have you named that mower yet?
So the mower here in the back is Hagrid, and then the mower in the front is a smaller mower. It's Malfoy. So, and I don't know. Yeah, I won't talk about trademark usage or whatever. But anyway, yeah, so those are just my names. And then my next door neighbor just put in one of these 430, and it's a 430 XH. So same as Hagrid here, and he named his Gordon. So I think, it's the kind of thing that invites a name. And I do find as I work around the yard, wherever I'm working, he will come and bump. I think it's almost as good as having a dog.
Yeah. Right. It's actually better. A dog that works. So,
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody who hasn't named their mower. Dino is hard at work, except he's on vacation now.
Is yours Dino?
Yeah, Dino's mine. And it's the fun of the mowers, I think.
For sure.
So, Stuart, this was so nice and generous of you to invite us to your home to really see firsthand, that you're not just talking about conservation, you're really implementing it at your own home. You certainly have given us a lot of great ideas. And I know that many of us are light years ahead after watching this, and I know we'll be implementing a lot of these as we go forward in our landscape maintenance. So thank you.
Yeah. I hope there's some helpful ideas there, and appreciate anybody who wants to share. And obviously we'll answer, right, Richard, any questions. We're very passionate about this. We of course are trying to we know our technology best, and so in that regard maybe aren't always specifically brand agnostic. But we just feel passionately that whatever it is you do and whatever equipment that you use, that you really be engaged with your watering. That is the key to, and your cultivation, right, of your landscape. That is the key to sustainable practices. And really, right, Richard, we are so focused on it that we're just always looking for more good ideas. We try them. Nothing we've talked about here today isn't something that you and I don't practice. I mean, we really do that. And if anyone has good ideas that they want to share, we'd really love to hear those, and we'll share them back in future webinars.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again, Stuart. I want to thank all of you for watching. As you know, these are free webinars showing our commitment, as Stuart just said. And remember, you can listen to these webinars too. We extract the audio and put it on a podcast. So wherever you get your favorite podcast, just look for the Water Connections irrigation series, and you will find us there. Always gets me excited that people are listening, educating while they're working. There's nothing better. Anyway, thanks again to everybody. Thanks again, Stuart. I really appreciate it. Beautiful, beautiful garden there. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
It's a beautiful day. Thanks for joining me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.